Hi, this is Zena Harris.
And I'm Mark Rabin.
Welcome to the tie-in. Hey, Mark. How
Hey
you
Zena,
doing?
Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while since we did the podcast here. In a way, we pre-recorded for January in December,
Yeah.
and now we're just getting back into the swing of things. That's how we're doing this thing, right? We're recording a little bit in advance and trying different things, of course,
Yeah.
as we move into season 2 here.
I know. Super exciting to be in season two. Yeah, for the listeners. So our schedule usually, because Mark and I have day jobs and we're working on lots of things. So we carve out time to record the podcast. And usually we're recording on Wednesdays and Fridays. So we have some slots on those days and then try to have them, have them edited and then in the can, ready to go for um, a couple weeks out.
Yeah.
So that's how we typically approach this. So
Yeah, and we're trying different things here. Season 2, some fresher stuff, as in like recording it so that it can go out the next week, and also trying to pull in some of our friends for some quick chats from the field. And we're revisiting some of our exciting guests that we've talked to in season 1 as well to check in and see
mhm.
where they're at. So yeah, we're always open. By the way, any feedback that any of our listeners have on what we're doing or the format, we'd love to hear from you about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, people have messaged me. It's been really neat. I've heard from a couple folks that they're listening, and they're in Europe and different parts
Mhm.
of the world. So that part's been fun. But it's good to see you. Gosh, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
it's
The world's a different place.
totally a different place, and we haven't seen each other for a little while or done recordings for a while
Mhm.
because you were away
Yeah,
for what, couple weeks?
yeah. I was well, I decided to start the year off with a 10-day silent meditation retreat. It's also called the Vipassana. I'm sure many of our listeners have heard of it. And it's been a while that I've been wanting to do it. I've been trying to meditate in some form or another since I was like 10 years old,
Okay.
when I was in karate. But the funny thing is that they just told us to like sit on the ground
And be
and just be
quiet.
quiet. And like I never learned how to meditate. So I did that for like years. And then I've been sort of, the apps and different things, I did transcendental meditation, which is still a great modality of meditating. But this one, I was like, okay, I just want to like immerse myself. Like there's no talking, no cell phones, obviously no internet, for 10 days. And like learning this meditation technique, this Vipassana meditation technique that was developed 2,500 years ago by Gautama Buddha, and it was lost, and then this sort of reemerged here like in the last 50 years. So it's like, yeah, it's been a really interesting experience because I haven't not talked for 10 days ever in my
I
whole life.
know. Well, that's the first thing I thought when you told me you were going into a 10-day meditation. I was like, can this guy really be quiet for, for
I
that
know.
long? Honestly,
No.
I'm like, Mark
well
talks.
the,
He
well
talks to
the,
anyone.
well your brain's not quiet, that's for sure. I mean, the goal is to try to quiet the brain, but it's like you're you can go on a little nature walk and you can sit there, but every minute you're sitting, your brain is like, what about this? And you're like, what about that? And what about this? And what about that? And it's like, you're like, okay, bring it back.
Yeah.
What about this? Bring it back. What about this memory from childhood? Bring it back. Okay, what about this X, this, that? You know what I mean? It's like it just
Uh-huh.
goes on and on. Or this one thing that you did to that one person, and if you start feeling bad about it, and you're like, oh my God, it's just like, so that just goes on and on and on and on and on. The goal is to kind of like quiet that down. But even eating, like everything takes on a different sensory experience because you
Okay.
think about it. If you're not getting bombarded by everything, right? Social media, household things, your friends are going out or this and that and work stuff. right? You have a different sensory experience. Like even eating food quietly by yourself,
Hmm.
you're just kind of like, I'm going to chew this really slowly and I'm going to think about the flavors and I'm going to think about that. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, it's a wild, wild trip. So, but it's also like, I think the thing that's crazy is that this was developed 2,500 years ago for the exact same problem and challenges that we have today in our modern times. And in fact, I think mindfulness and meditation is more relevant today
Yeah.
than ever before.
Yeah, yeah, it's just, I mean, I feel the stressors myself of kind of distraction and, this lack of focus. And there's so many things to know, so many places to get information from, and then, social media and just, yeah, like just, I find myself trying to, you know, focus in on a couple of platforms, a couple of news places, just so that I can block out some of the noise just out there.
Mm.
And then not even like, you know, uh, dealing with household things or like family things and, scheduling and all the stuff that goes into all of that, trying to focus and be present on that so that, you're not like thinking about work and then you've got this, family thing to right in front of you and, then you're distracted and all the stuff. So
Yeah. It's
it's
just
a
not nonstop.
chore.
It's nonstop. Like we live in a world of just utter intoxicated distraction every minute
Yeah.
of the day. And in fact, the algorithms are designed to do that,
Hmm.
right? Like everything is designed to take your attention. Anyway, it's wild. And then while I was in there, I come out and I'm like, LA's burnt down, well, parts of LA. And I was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like literally, I went in and it was like, oh, there's like a small fire somewhere in Malibu or Pacific, whatever it is,
Palisades.
Palisades.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay. And then went offline for 10 days.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
scary stuff. I mean, it's wild.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because, immediately like that's my attention was on that. I have a lot of friends and my team even down in LA. So trying to just check in with people and monitor the situation from a distance. It's kind of weird to not be able to like physically help in any way, but
Yeah.
I,
And
for-
we were gonna go to a conference too.
we're going to go to a
Yeah.
conference. There are a lot of, like there's a lot of momentum, in that area. And we are gearing up and so there was a lot swirling, folks dealing with, this major disaster and, helping each other and thinking through, next steps and all the stuff. And then I get the call from you. I forgot, like you didn't know any of
No,
this. And I get a call from you and you're like, holy shit, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, you don't know.
no. So it's kind of like weird to go into a bit of a time standstill. But also it's like, yeah, there's just so many things going on, with like, and again, the election and the inauguration and,
Mm-hmm.
everything going on. It just like, yeah, it just feels like we're sort of like in the precipice of this sort of uncharted territory, new world. And for one,
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for it, to be honest with you. I'm all for it. Like we need a shake up, right? Like it's like if we don't get a shake up, like status quo it's just sort of like it's
Yeah.
it's pretty lame.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting you say that. I feel like I feel the shakeup emotionally. Like I feel my emotions going up and down and swirling around because it's just been um, a lot to deal with in different kind of areas of life, and a lot of attention and energy going into worrying a bit about, the political landscape and what does that mean? What does it mean for all the momentum in sort of the climate movement, right? Like, that's our space. That's what we work in. And, we've been talking about it as a team. We've been talking about it, just as a family, like all this
Yeah.
stuff. Like, what does this mean? What's going to happen? And then just being disappointed in that space and then, the stressors of, what people are going through in LA and
Yeah.
whatnot. It's just it's been a bit of an emotional roller coaster, and I bet for
Yeah.
a lot of people in
Oh yeah.
various ways. I mean, some people really are excited about, some of the change going on, and it's just really interesting. And but yeah, I feel shaken up.
Yeah.
And
And but it's good. It's okay. Like it's okay to feel uncomfortable. And
totally.
I think this is the challenge that we've had is for the last, call it 300 years, right? Or whenever sort of we really triumphed over nature. Um, it's like I think we just got really complacent and
Hmm.
comfortable with our standing on this very dynamic, always changing planet. And I don't think change is inherently built into our daily existence here in our economy and like this, like it's going to be. Um, so I think to me that's a great reminder. And
Hmm.
also in order for folks to really take initiative and take action, they need to feel pain. And what does that look like? I mean, yeah, so your mansion burns down. Okay, that sucks. But it's like, is this what it's going to take for people to take that call to action and pressure their politicians and their insurance companies and their families and their wherever it is? Like, how many hurricanes can like blow through the south and southeast? Like the insurance
Hmm.
companies are going to be the ones running the show because they're going to be like not going to insure that McMansion on the side of the ocean. So it's like, so I think that there is something to be said about people need to feel that a little bit of pain in their pocketbooks or some form, but also, what David Fenton always talks about too is like it's like two parts pain, one part hope, or some sort of like form. He says something like that. But it's like so you kind of have to balance it out. It's like what is there's a pain, but we have a way out,
Yeah. Yeah,
right?
when you can see yeah, it's enough disruption to the system that causes you to rethink the system, I think is what, ultimately this is. And it's interesting because you know, in that regard, we talk about it in the context of like film and TV production, for example, and we got to rethink and whatnot. But then when you start seeing constraints being put on supply chains or locations or insurance or wherever this is starting to happen, it forces you to rethink. It
Yeah.
forces you to do something differently, and I think that's kind of where we are. And folks are going to be forced to do something differently, one way or another. So it's
Yeah.
I don't know. It's going to take a little while, I think, but I think there's a lot that's being shaken up here. So,
Yeah, well,
um,
I mean, look, Hollywood's not going to stop
oh
being going
no, but stuff,
green. The planet's not. People aren't going to stop
no,
this. So I think
no.
it's just like a bump in the road, and the question is like, how do people find their footing, and then, sort of like find that place to make impact over the next number of years, and
Mhm.
yeah, see what happens.
Totally, totally. Well, I've been just really impressed with the level of support and just for folks in and around LA. Like it's interesting, you think how can the entertainment industry help? That while we help each other, friends and crew members and whatever who check in on each other, these sorts of things. I mean, there's been, a massive effort, like folks we've talked to on this podcast are
Hmm.
collaborating to get clean tech out in the field to help power,
Nice.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Neil,
um,
I saw Overdrive
disaster relief type
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's really cool. I've kicked in a little money to help those folks on the
Yeah.
footprint
Yeah.
project.
Oh yeah.
And
Nice.
yeah, and then you see like folks like location managers and scouts who have gone out to scout a particular, location, a house, whatever, that's now burned down.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
saying, hey, if I ever scouted your place, give me a call because I have measurements, I have photos, I have all the stuff that you can use for your
Wow.
insurance claims. I mean, like
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff like that is like now where the industry is helping in ways that, I that's I didn't
Yeah.
think of that. And then, you see, I've seen it posted on, I think Facebook a few times, and then folks have talked, mentioned it to me, and I'm like, that's so
Yeah.
cool that we can help in
Humans
that
are
way.
amazing. We want to we're community oriented beings and animals here,
Hmm.
and Like, yeah, it's inspiring to see that. So,
Hmm.
yeah, look, and we got lots of inspiring conversations coming up
Right.
this season. So I think, look forward to exploring that with you and with our future guests.
Hmm. Hmm. Yep. Well, great little catch up, and let's see what we can do this year. So we recorded this conversation with Lindsay in December. So,
Yeah.
a lot's happened since then. It's been in the can, ready to go for January. And since we talked to her, LA has been
Hmm.
burning, right? It's been a mess.
Decimated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So just want to preface this conversation by saying this is an opportunity. She talks about her Livable Communities initiative, and this is, the opportunity to build
Hmm.
communities that we
Yep.
want. And it's just so fitting now that everyone's thinking about how to rebuild various
Yeah.
parts of LA. So, um,
Yeah. I mean, this might be the catalyst, unfortunate catalyst, but to really reimagine LA as
mhm,
truly a livable, vibrant city, um, that also can be, uh, you know, not because right now it's prone to a lot of different types of social and political
mhm,
and natural disaster challenges.
mhm,
How do you redesign a city to be
mhm.
resilient in so many ways? And I think that that's part of the conversation that and her group are able to have.
She's got a solution. They've got a lot of momentum, and maybe this will be part of the conversation now as folks talk about rebuilding LA. So let's take a listen. Hope you enjoy, and would love to hear your comments afterward.
Hey everyone, today we're speaking with Lindsay Sturman. She's known in entertainment as a writer and showrunner for recent productions like When Calls the Heart, Supergirl, and Teen Wolf, to name a few. She's also the co-founder of the Livable Communities Initiative and a housing, transportation, and bike activist, as well as the co-host of the podcast Bike Talk.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Livable Communities Initiative, which is a plan to address LA's housing, traffic, and climate crisis by building 3 to 5 story buildings of gentle density above small retail along commercial streets, which sounds cool. This would transform neighborhoods into walkable, bikeable, and livable communities. Um, Throughout LA, a vibrant LA is also great for entertainment.
Absolutely. This is a little bit of a departure from our day-to-day interviews. However, we really wanted to speak with Lindsay. Uh, she's in the industry, she's in the community, and we talk a lot about, to all of our guests, and they're people making change happen at the community grassroots level, and we love what she's about.
Yeah, 100%. I remember even back to my early days, starting in this industry. I quickly recognized, people kept saying the same theme coming out. I do this kind of stuff at home, but I don't do it at work. And this is a perfect example of like someone who's really passionate about, um, a livable community and a vibrant community, and also working in entertainment. And if we don't tap into kind of that internal passion people have, what they're doing outside of their work time, how they're engaging with their neighbors, these sorts of
Mhm.
things, and we don't kind of bring that into the workforce and tap into it. How do you engage with your film community? You know, how do we brainstorm and problem solve around sustainability? I think we're missing out on a huge portion of the person, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like we're going to kind of feel that with Lindsay here in this conversation.
Absolutely. And, again, who wants to go to work in a wasteland? I
Yeah.
mean, no, nobody. I mean, we're all part of it. And also this does dovetail into, the new tax incentives, in California to bring production back. So I think it all combines in. It's not just tax incentives. It's like, where do people want to live? Where do people want to engage in their community? How do they want to engage in their neighborhoods and with their neighbors? How do they want to get around on Saturday and Sunday afternoons? You
And
know?
And from a strictly production perspective, honestly, when you have cool locations to scout out around the city,
Mhm.
like who wouldn't want to go scout out a fun neighborhood with a neat community-oriented street with coffee shops and all the stuff? We're trying to build those on backlots, right?
Yeah.
Like this is an opportunity to enhance that part of production as well.
Well, and I think that's why, we go to Europe to
Yeah.
to check it out, or we go to New York or, Montreal or wherever. These great cities. They're fun to film in, and they're also fun to visit and to feel the energy and the vibe. So yeah, I mean, I think this is all part of our continuing discussion around the people behind the scenes making the change happen, really, truly at grassroots levels.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, this seems like a great initiative. I am excited to learn more. So let's dive in. We are here with Lindsay Sturman. Uh, Welcome to the podcast. We're so happy to be talking with you. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. We're really excited to hear your perspective on sort of these broad topics of innovation, sustainability, both. I mean, we know you work in the entertainment industry, so and then the initiatives you're a part of outside of that as well, or in connection. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me.
And hey, Lindsay, nice to meet you as well. So, we started this podcast to bring forth the voices of people doing amazing work behind the scenes in entertainment, of which you are a part of. But as well, we're also excited to speak with you about your Livable Communities initiative and other mobility, housing, and transportation projects that you're a part of. So, yeah, we're broadening the scope here today a little bit, and excited to hear, yeah, what you're up to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you sound like a really busy person.
Oh, well, it's funny because I work in television and then I just have this passion, like I think a lot of writers, for these, a cause like obviously climate. And in LA, if you live in Los Angeles, housing is just sort of the issue of the time. And
Hmm.
interestingly enough, I I got into it just trying to sort of understand the issue, just as a layperson who lives in Los Angeles. And what I quickly found, or we all found, because it was a big group of us, is that housing and transportation are interconnected. So they're really interconnected with climate, and I didn't see that coming.
Hmm. Hmm. That's interesting. So how did this, you said a group of people were interested in this. Really, how did this come to be for you? I mean, I know you have a history in film and TV industry. Is this something that, you saw as you were out and about shooting, or how did this like come to the forefront for you?
Yeah, and so I live in Larchmont Village, and there's a group here. It's amazing. Everyone should check it out. Hang out, do good. And so my neighbor has been organizing the whole, a lot of people in LA, actually, it's across LA, but a lot of people in Larchmont to hang out and do good. What are the things we can do? And she's organized 500,000 sandwiches have been made for our unhoused neighbors since COVID started. So she's just this sort of, this great organizer. And she does a lot of study groups. Her name's Jen Levin, and just check out the website. And everybody's invited to everything. It's incredible. I think she has like 3,500 members. And
Wow.
she wanted to understand the housing crisis. And by the way, a lot of us are in TV. So I think part of it is that if you work in TV, if you're a TV writer, you're always sort of solving puzzles. What's the puzzle of production? What's the puzzle of the scene? And so when she invited people to do this study group, a lot of writers jumped in because like, well, okay, we want to understand this. And like I write sci-fi, so you do a lot of research, right? So I'm used to, okay, I've got to understand like, the physics of space travel. So dive in. And she led this, it was several months. And then it was during COVID, we were Zooming, and it was one of those things is that we pull in experts from UCLA who study housing for a living. And very quickly, what emerged is how do you solve a housing crisis? And it's something that's been around for thousands of years. Actually, it's just a 15-minute city. So when you build housing without parking and you build it small and you build it above stores, it's cheap to build, inexpensive, high quality, and the rents are low. So it's sort of it's called naturally occurring affordable housing. So you can build this sort of easy typology, and you take the traffic out of the situation, so that kind of appeases the NIMBYs who fight you. It's gentle density at human scale. It's 3 to 5 stories. So again, the NIMBYs aren't fighting you. It starts to sort of solve everything at once and has this huge climate impact because it's a walkable neighborhood where you're taking transit because you don't own a car. So, and this is like the third rail. This is where everything dies, is because people profoundly believe you can't live in Los Angeles without a car. And it doesn't matter how many facts you put out there. You're like, well, 25% of Santa Monica doesn't own a car. 10% of the city doesn't own a car. 30% of people don't drive. And it's just like, over time, people have come around, but that's the sticking point for people. Will people live in Los Angeles without a car?
It's interesting to think about that. I was just in Europe, in Netherlands, in Amsterdam, but I spent a lot of time there, and it's like they're they figured it out 1,000 years ago, and everybody's on bikes and crisscrossing, and the tourism's booming, and the shops are booming, and yeah, it's exactly that sort of medium density city that Europe's really, like I said, figured it out hundreds to 1,000 years ago. And so you're thinking something similar to that design in key neighborhoods in Los Angeles?
Yeah, and it's Europe, Asia, India, every city in the world has residential over retail, building small apartments above shops. It's where the shopkeepers would live. And so it's just sort of this basic typology. And then it was walkable because we didn't have cars. So we built cities starting thousands of years ago, literally this way. And what we really perfected as humans is the community of it all, how to get how commerce can work and how you're near people, you make friends. When there aren't cars on a street, you actually have like twice as many friends because you cross the street.
Yeah.
So the cars kind of divide us. So it has all these effects. But yeah, so it was built before AC. We built cities this way before AC, before air conditioning. So before cars and before AC, we built self-cooling apartments all over the Mediterranean. And LA is actually a Mediterranean climate. So that's the typology, the housing we should build should match. It does. That's how we built LA. And LA is interesting in that we're actually a city of neighborhoods that were connected by the Red Line trolleys. So when people say like, oh, LA is a car city, it's like actually not true. We are a trolley city. We have 400 historic main streets and historic villages. And you've heard of them: Westwood Village, Culver City, Santa Monica. They were little villages, and Larchmont Village, Leimert Park, Highland Park. They're everywhere. And they're these little main streets. And this is part of the research that we stumbled onto. And everything I'm saying, I learned from somebody, like someone else figured this out. And we just kind of pulled it together to how it can work in LA, because I can talk to you about, like, say, transit issues. Like there's one kind of transit that would work really well here. And then there's other transit that's just like, it's not worth doing. And I can explain that. So what can work in LA? Like not every, we're never going to be Manhattan, and people will say that. I actually agree. I think anxiety over earthquakes is just, it's a real block for people. And we don't need 20-story buildings. 3-story, 5 stories. If we just zone the city for 3-story buildings, we double the capacity. Like we don't need to go super talls. But so back to what what you were saying is that yes, Europe is a model for this typology, and there's a reason we build that way. 3 to 5 story buildings, 6 stories. Paris is 6 stories. I think Barcelona is 6 or 7 stories. It actually feels good when you walk down a street. The super talls are cool. They're architecture. They're very impressive, but they don't actually make us feel that good. Whereas a sweet little street, the West Village, makes us feel good. And that is actually LA's history. So our idea is you take our historic main streets. As I said, we have 400 of them. And, Larchmont is a great example of just small shops, or Abbot Kinney, right? It's not a big box store. And that is actually one of the big things that was pointed out to us. That's kind of like, when you have these moments of like, you take the pill and, it's the Matrix, and you just see it, walk past a CVS, right? Or a Bevmo, right? Do you want to be there? They actually black out the windows because they don't want you looking in. And then there's a parking lot, and then there's a curb cut. And all these things are like, we don't want to be there, versus strolling down, right, Main Street in Santa Monica with, like, whether it's a cup of coffee, a friend, a small child, like you want to be there. So it's that walkability is really, it has to be real. You really can't fake it. We try all the time. When you tear down a whole block and you try to put in small retail, you just get like a Verizon store and like a national chain. You don't get, the shops that have been there. They're called actually legacy family businesses. And we have them all over. They've been around for 20 years. That's how you define them. And it's what makes a street a place you want to be. And this all goes back to sort of Jane Jacobs and Sticky Streets and a place you're drawn to. So that is the basis for a 50-minute city. And then LA, I can talk about transit, but LA actually has the perfect bones to become one of the best 50-minute cities in the world.
Well, you just sold me. I mean,
Done.
so
Moving to
like,
LA.
yeah. Um, so okay. I mean, sounds great. I mean, we've got models. It's sounds like, LA's got the bones for it. So how is this conversation going? Who are the people you're talking to that make decisions? And are they city councils? Are they, like what does that part look like?
That's a great question. So for about 3.5, 4 years, we have worked with 5, 6, 7 cities in Southern California. We have been contacted. I'm the mobility person. I'm got obsessed. I went from housing to bikes really quickly, and then I went to Amsterdam right before COVID, and I was like, I'm sold. Like this is
I
so
think Mark's getting a
Hard not
fancy
to be
bike
sold.
too.
right. It's like you're like this works. I totally get it. And then in our group, we have architects and planners and professors of urban studies. And my partner Ed Mendoza he's this brilliant planner, and he is speaking all over the country on something very discreet called single staircase reform. And now that I've said it, you're going to see it everywhere. Like it's popping up because it's so obscure. So this is to sort of answer your question, is that I think the key really is systems. And I can talk about that in 1 second. But so basically we have a gummed up building code and a gummed up planning code and gummed up process for mobility. And what you need to do is take out all the things that it's like a fly in the ointment. It absolutely hard stop blocks these communities from getting built. And Ed figured out that it was the staircases. And it's basically, it's so technical. Basically what it is that if you look at like Soho or the West Village, all the buildings touch each other. It's called zero lot line. They touch each other. And then they have residential retail on the bottom. But where do you get where do you get your bedrooms get light? Well, there's actually a courtyard behind it. Mm-hmm. So, and that's how, courtyard buildings are how all of Europe is built. So you have, it's called a perimeter block, residential on the street, and then the courtyard in back, whether it's small or a big one. And that gives you cross breezes. And you need them in LA in a warm climate because it self-cools. You just open 2 windows and boom, the temperature drops 10 degrees. Mm-hmm. And I won't even get into it. We got rid of this typology because of cars. Like you can't take a storefront, think of a Starbucks and put 20 units above it. You could, and it'd be like, 3, 4 stories, right? Which is people are very cool with in LA. But where would you put cars for 10 people, 10 households? Like where are you going to put 20 cars under a Starbucks, right? It doesn't work. So we sort of threw out this typology. Sorry. So back to the where we are, we're working with cities to understand, first of all, just education, like we're research and education, like here's how this works. And we've talked to the experts. As co-hosting the podcast Bike Talk, I talk to people all over the world and hear what is the research, what actually works, what removes the flies in the ointment, so that we're not in this sort of catastrophic failure where our buses don't work, nobody takes our amazing transit. We have amazing transit in LA. Nobody walks, nobody bikes, right? Because it's way too dangerous, and we can't build housing. And when we do build housing, it's sprawl. Well, what are those bugs? So we've gone in, we've identified them, and we're working with different cities. And we've actually, for government, I feel like we've done an incredible job. Like We passed a state bill on single staircase reform. We are in 2 city housing elements. We're in general plans. We are working our way. I think the LA City Council has approved motions about us like 5 or 6 times, always unanimously. But the wheels of government are slow. And we're like TV people. We're like, what is going on? Like this should let's
This
get
should
this
roll.
done.
We need to get this guy. Yeah.
It's like it's happening. So I'm both grateful to all the elected officials who've worked closely with us and moving things forward. And I feel like the real solution to all of this, and I really think it's out there in the zeitgeist. I think the whether it's Ezra Klein or Matt Iglesias, I think people are talking about this, which is that cities need to work. Blue cities and blue states, like we need to show we can run good cities. We can build housing, we can fix buses, we can make it a place people want to live. And that's systems thinking. And one of the best parts of our group is that this brilliant systems engineer who works in tech has volunteered a ton of his time to create a systems approach. And a systems is like your iPhone, right? Like everything on your iPhone is like really enjoyable. The App Store, it always works. It never crashes. So that's systems engineering. And Apple's like, they're the gold standard of systems engineering. And so we can systems engineer how our bus system works. And it's called a BRT, and I can explain it, how our housing gets built. In Vienna, everything is pre-entitled and pre-permitted, so that when a developer goes to build something, they just pull a permit and they're breaking ground in 48 hours. Well, why can't we do that? That's like, why does it take 9 years to build an ADU? It doesn't have to. So how do we work out all the problems, all those little flies in the ointment? And there's probably, somewhere between 50 and 100 of them, depending on the city, so that it just flows.
So we talk a lot about communicating clear messaging and, it's like distilling complex messages into sort of these clear messages. Have you guys thought about that? And how are you approaching the city? How are you approaching the communities to get them on board so quickly and unanimously?
Yeah, it's really hard because you're going up against like so many buzzsaws. You're like touching every hot button. Truthfully, people hate bikes. They find cyclists scary. As drivers, they hate them. As pedestrians, they hate them. They don't bike. So I've actually mostly decided that bikes are very big. And I deeply believe it's how cities should work, because bikes are the one thing that closes the gap between walking and a car, right? Because you can get kids to school in a cargo bike. E-bikes or cargo bikes are outselling cars in Europe. So we know they work. We know people will adopt them and enjoy them. It's our happiest form of transportation. The messaging is really challenging. And so I've presented to over 5,000 people in the past like 3.5 years. I stopped counting about a year ago. And we just go to endless community meetings. We go hat in hand. We do not say this is how you should build your community. We say, here's an option. What if you had a walkable street near you where there are, instead of 50% vacancies, and it's storage facilities, right? It's vibrant local retail. It's called neighborhood serving retail. There's a great list. And it's the stuff you'd expect. And imagine this was in walking distance. A grocery store, a mail shop, restaurants, cafes, a nail salon, a butcher, a corner bar, because that makes us happier. Like literally, if you go once a week to meet a friend at a bar, you're happier. So all of this is really like called the happy city, right? It's like, how do we create a quality of life? And again, I think this is showing up in the election. Quality of life and cost of living are just huge on people's minds. And for not everyone, but the data really shows that about 50% of people would prefer this lifestyle, especially millennials and Gen Zers. They overwhelmingly do not want to own a car. They want to live where they can walk. And then the other group is seniors, because the AARP put out this data that we lose our ability to drive for the last 7 to 10 years of our life. Women, it's 10, and men, it's 7. They take your license away. They just say you can't drive, and you probably shouldn't be driving. So people are forced to move to retirement communities. And it becomes like a tragedy for people's families. Like they can't see their grandkids, they can't see their parents. So walkable neighborhoods solve that issue, and you can age in place. So we go to people and we just, again, like hat in hand, and we say, here's the research, here's what's possible. What do you think? And I really can count on both hands the number of people who are like, I hate it, or it won't work. People love it. They're, they get caught up in like, well, will people live, so they get caught on a few things. Like there's like, the classic, the list of things that they're going to get caught on. But so we go out and we do the research. And one of the things people kept getting caught on was traffic. Like, won't it make the traffic worse if you, slow the cars down on this stretch of and then we went out and we figured out how to get rid of the traffic, the 12 ways you can reduce traffic, and actually the data that shows it will actually get better.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying a lot of stuff. I love hearing how people are tackling these complex issues in different spaces. Like this just like gets my brain going. And, I think about how can we take some of these concepts and apply them in entertainment? Because this is like the area I focus in a lot. And, Mark's on the energy side and tech side. And so I'm curious, like it just seems so inspiring that you have like you've taken kind of your learnings, your nature from your entertainment experience and kind of applying them to this city's context, this livable communities context. Do you see these the transferable skills? Do you see how that's kind of connected and helped you? I'm curious because my head's spinning. I've written down some words that some key words that you've said. I'm going to try and use them.
I think the big thing, and I can show you the image, is once we had a rendering. Once we had a before and after, that was the game changer. And I found somebody on Craigslist, and she did this incredible. She's a Koreatown artist, and she just did this beautiful before and after. And I can show it to you if you want. Yeah. And that started to change the conversation.
Yeah.
I've always found that the rendering and the visual representation, you could create almost any story. That's how I started Portable Electric. I had this like futuristic rendering of like what the future of portable power is going to be like. And people were like, all right, I'll take it. I'm like, well, it doesn't exist yet. It's not real. Your traditional American LA street, and
so
Canada
LA has
too, for that matter.
7,000 miles of streets, and like half of them are just commercial corridors. And this is small retail. And that's the key, is that it's not a big box store, right? And then this was our first rendering early when we didn't know a lot. But the idea is you make it incredibly easy to build housing. Like you invite people to build. You invite the parcel owner. 90% of parcel owners won't sell. That's another problem. So people who own real estate, you have to think of them, for them, it's a 401k. They're just putting some money away for the future. And maybe they inherited it from an uncle. Maybe it's 8 cousins. They're never going to agree to sell. They get passive income, and passive income is the easiest income. So people don't tend to rock the boat. And it's not the family farm. There's nothing sentimental about it. They bought this as an investment. And if you said to somebody, hey, do you want to take a few points off your 401k to do good in the world? You'd be like, no, thanks. That's not what my 401k is for. I'm happy to do good in the world through other methods, like how I give money. But so you have to like sort of ruthlessly think about their perspective. And again, as a writer, all day long, you think about a character, so like, what do they want in this scene? What do they want in life, right? That's like, what's driving them? So we have to be realistic about what drives people.
But just for the listeners, maybe we'll just sort of describe it here. We've got a tree-lined street with a protected bike lane and median, a small 2-lane road, and also like your sort of 3-story, 4-story buildings with restaurant, street side shops, and so on.
Yeah, and the one of the things we took apart is how do you transform a street for walkability? This street, believe it or not, is 6 lanes. So it's 2 parking lanes one on each side and 4 lanes of traffic. And we rendered it to 1 lane in each direction going 10 miles an hour, which is very aggressively slow. But at 10 miles an hour, children can walk across the street because they won't get hit by the car. The car has enough time. And if they hit them, it's very rare to have a fatality. At 20 miles an hour, 10% chance of people dying. Yeah. And then al fresco trees in Southern California is a really big deal because it's hot here. And that's really it. That combination of slow cars, trees, and small retail gets you walkability. So our argument is, what if you take a few streets and make them really pleasant to walk on, and then you just add the housing, because why wouldn't you? Because it's a perfect place to live without a car.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah,
And then
it's
people
impressive.
flock to that area. They go, like there are just so many other benefits as you said. So, I mean, I get it. So this type of rendering is what starts to change people's minds. They get to talking about it. It looks a lot better, and people want to live in this walkable
And
space.
I think AI is really going to change. Here's another one. This is actually an AI image that I just pulled off. Somebody on the internet puts these out all the time. And it's like, it's a courtyard. It's a courtyard building. You can see a group of people just having a beer, a family, like three adults having beer together, watching some children play behind them in a contained, safe courtyard. And
Mhm.
I don't know about you guys. I look at this, I'm like, I would love to live here.
Yeah.
This looks so inviting. And so I think AI is really going to change things. But I do think TV and film people who think visually, I think it can really help, because it just activates the imagination of what's possible. Because I think right now we know what we know, and it's hard to imagine our streets being different. And I should
Yeah.
ask you guys, where are you guys located?
I'm in
I
Vancouver. So
yeah.
we have livable streets, very livable for the most part. There's a lot of cars still and sort of like flat urban burbs, but
Mhm,
the core areas are very walkable, bikeable.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, I'm in Tacoma, Washington, and I chose we bought a house here 2.5 years ago, and I chose, where the area I wanted to buy based on walkability, um, proximity to school, proximity to the grocery store, proximity to the kind of the walkable, like little cool street that we have. We're there and we walk.
Right.
Like, I in a time of transition, like when you're moving and you're like thinking like, what do I want? How do I want, what type of housing do I want that's different than what I currently have? If I'm, now in this position to choose, what would I want? And so that was a big decision as we were looking around. I'm literally drawing like, neighborhood kind of areas and thinking, okay, I want to live kind of here. I see a grocery store here, here, here. I see, you know, and really starting to think it out. And because it was really important to us, to be able to have this walkability. And I know that's, a luxury for folks as they're trying to choose housing, but it was very high on our list.
But it's only a luxury because there's not enough of it. And
Yeah.
True.
it's the backbone of how we built our cities. And it was the cheap housing. It was,
Hmm.
you go and it's a walk up. It's a tenement. It's a New York walk up. And now of course you can put an elevator in it. But that's my daughter lives in a walk up in New York, and she literally has to walk up the stairs to get to her apartment. And it's pretty cheap, but it's ridiculously expensive at the same time. And it's a windowless bedroom, by the way, because we stopped building them. And the reason we stopped building them is because we had to accommodate parking. And there's no physical way to accommodate parking and a walkable neighborhood without insane amounts of traffic. But they just don't fit fundamentally. And that's the radical part of what we're saying. And it's, you just have to be careful, because in terms of communicating, it's like almost like it's too much for people to even comprehend a world without cars. And that's obviously, I love my car. I drive. I'm fine with cars. I think they should be EVs, as we all do, but it's not a war on cars, although there's a great podcast called War on Cars. It's it's the idea that for the 30% of people who don't drive, for people who don't want to drive, you can't afford a car, and you're just young and you just like want to like be near bars, whatever your reasons are, a lot of people are drawn to it, but we don't make it possible. And that's where it's almost like we need to take all of our rules around planning and how we build housing and permitting, and just sort of start again. Like, how would you build a great city? And by the way, cities like Paris were built intentionally. They actually had these pre-approved plans So they said, here's the building you're going to build there. And so the Paris we all know, those 6 stories, beautiful yellow stone, that was urban planned. And they let entrepreneurs just build housing. So we really like it's how housing gets built. So it's not that far afield. The one thing that changes everything is saying, can we build neighborhoods without some neighborhoods that are just not car centric?
Hmm. Hmm.
What comes to mind here is I don't know if you've seen it online. There's this classic photo of Amsterdam. So Amsterdam in the 70s, we used to have car fatalities in the Netherlands were prevalent. And they show a before and after the same street. And it was like this parking lot, this street with cars, and then now it's this like tree-lined bike lane. There's a whole bunch of images online that can be searched if you do a comparative. So
Mhm.
it is possible, and within a short amount of time, to make
It's
those changes.
it's actually overnight because
Yeah.
if you've ever been to LA and done ciclovia, so it started in Bogota, and every Sunday, like about half the streets just don't have cars, and
Mhm.
everybody bikes. And so LA imported it, and once a month, it's in different neighborhoods, and literally everybody just goes out and bikes. Like
Yeah.
you just take the cars off. That's all you have to do. So it's the cheapest, easiest intervention. We picked the slowest, most expensive one, which is trying to engineer cars and people together, which is just so hard because it's so inherently dangerous. And so you're sort of trying to like figure out like how can I put a baby and a tiger in a room together safely? It's like it's really hard. So
Yeah.
and I would argue, it's not impossible, but it, at the end of the day, you just don't want children and bikes mixing with moving cars.
Yeah.
And that's yeah.
Yeah. And all the like the ripple effect of all of this that has, you think about the systems involved and the interweaving systems involved, health and well-being and economic, opportunity and all of this that is, kind of intertwined. It seems like quite a positive mix. So what how long do you think it's going to be until LA starts to really like where is this currently happening, at the sort of micro level and how's it going?
Yeah,
What's the
thank you.
ripple
And
effect?
let's, from your lips to God's ears. The Santa Monica is actually kind of quietly just doing it. As I said, they already 25% of people don't drive there. 95% of their workers drive in or commute in, I should say. And so they need the housing. They're doing the bike lanes. They're doing the Dutch bike intersections. The issue with bike lanes is that it's really easy to do a protected bike lane, right? And it's totally safe, right? There's a car and 3 feet of, a tree. You're fine. It's the intersections that are never safe, but you can do them. You can engineer them very carefully to be safe. And once they're safe, we just feel it. We won't bike if it's not safe, the same way we won't give a baby food that got recalled. Like we just simply as parents will not do it. It's ridiculous to ask us to do it. We won't do it. So when you're asking someone to use an unsafe bike lane, some people will. So Mark, it sounds like you do. I've biked in Vancouver.
Yeah.
That's an elite group that will bike in because it's great, but every time there's a moment where you could die, you basically cap the number of bikers around 8%. And Canadians might be a little bit braver, and we have enormous cars and everybody's texting. So it's very on off. So you really have to do it right. But the minute you do it right, it's 90% of people will bike. That's actually the coolest thing. When I think about like this whole project, like what are the secrets? Like the coolest thing is that the minute you make it safe, you'll see 80 to 90% of people out there
Or
biking.
else they'll be left behind by their friends, right? Because I have this saying I always say, people on bikes are going places. I've
Thank you.
always
I'm going
thought
to use
about that.
that. I
Yeah,
love
please,
that.
you can. I made it up, but you're welcome to use it.
It's really good.
People on bikes are going places because it's true. Just thinking back to your film and writing background, I mean, I almost see a vision for not sci-fi, but you know what I mean, like a future-fi,
Cli-fi.
um, yeah, like story about this, like where the city is. where you've reimagined LA looking like this, and the storyline is all based around this, and now with virtual studios and CGI and whatever AI, etc. I mean, we could probably do a fairly compelling story with a future LA looking like this, and maybe that could be the catalyst for this change. Because I think to your point about visualizing it and telling a great story, we talk about that all the time, right? We can write it in. Um, I don't know. It just seems like something that could be done and could be compelling.
I've been working on that. I agree.
Great.
Because I think if you see that transformation, and if you look back, so many movies, especially animated movies, have the urbanism in the Wakanda is amazing. When we think about imaginary worlds where we want to live, it's always great urbanism. They're not cars. And I think that, yeah, so I have been trying to figure out the story that's, fun and compelling and, people actually want to watch, but that has those transformations. Because I think that once you see what's possible, then it's like the rendering. It's like it's like you take the red pill, you see the matrix, you're not going to unsee it. And now whenever I walk around a street, I'm like, all I'm imagining is like what it could be, and not being stuck with like, that we need that we need all of our streets to be freeways, which they really are. I mean, we have, 11-lane freeways going through basically residential neighborhoods where cars are going 70 miles an hour. And we lost, it got away from us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I personally want to hold on to that feeling. You know how you go, like you visit a new place, you see it's, walkable and it's a fun thing, but you're only there temporarily. And you kind of have that, oh, this is cool. It's so neat to be here. And that feeling, I want that to last to be there all the time, right? Like it's really that. Like, and then you can tell when you go home or go back, and it's like, oh, all right, back to this, back to the, you feel it, you actually feel it. And I think giving people the opportunity to feel it, more locally, like going to Santa Monica for the weekend and seeing like this is what it can be, right? And then kind of activating, in their neighborhood at their neighborhood level. That seems really positive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that there's so many opportunities. They're closing the Santa Monica airport. And,
Mm.
if you put basically a little Barcelona there, it'd be like 30,000 people living in,
Mm.
Barcelona. It's like Barcelona is an incredible city
Hmm.
in terms of their housing typology and their parks. It also means that there's a park or playground every block. I mean, it's so transformational what the cars take away so much. Again, I love my car, love driving, totally fine with it. But I think most people would rather, I should say, a lot of people would rather just live inward facing to their community where where they're eating locally. And again, I live in Larchmont. The same reason I did the same calculation. Where do I want to live, long term? And I was like, I want to walk to a coffee shop. That's like my one rule. I want to be able to go to a Starbucks and sit in a cafe and work. And LA, as I said, it's our bones. Most of America has little main streets, right? And
Mhm.
of course, we killed them all with Walmart, which is a whole nother story. But bringing those back and then just adding housing above those little stores, that's where you can get your affordable housing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So we're going to be looking for that movie coming soon.
Exactly. Fairy tale.
No,
It's
I
the
mean,
reality.
yeah. Yeah.
That's not a fairy tale.
I
It's near
know
future.
it's here. Like, I mean, you just go document. It's a
Yeah, hike
documentary,
everywhere.
right? Like, this is happening. Just not.
But it's funny though, like being in Amsterdam a couple weeks ago, I felt like I was on a movie set, right? Because you're like, wow, how is this even real? But it's real.
Was it your first time there?
No, I've been there like countless times. I've been there like
Uh-huh.
so many times, but every time I go to Europe or every time I'm like, oh yeah, I get it, like it feels good, right? And
Well,
tourism loves it. And just like people love it, they're in the streets.
have you seen the transformation of Paris?
I haven't been there in a little bit. I was there a
What's
couple years ago.
what's amazing about what Anne Hidalgo, the mayor of Paris,
Yeah.
did, which is this shows you the way, is that she basically kind of sneakily did it. I think of it as Ocean's 11. Like it's like the greatest heist movie of all time, is that she took away like 75,000 parking spots.
Okay.
So she made
Oh.
it a headache to park, and then you just took the train. It was very sneaky because she didn't sort of like collide with anybody. And then she took away 200 schools. She did a school street. So she just closed the street and made it basically a big like playground for kids and parents. And parents, if you've ever walked a kid to elementary school, you stand around, you talk to the other parents, right? It's like a thing, right? And so she made it a community drop-off space, the whole block. And again, it was sort of low hanging fruit that didn't get a ton of pushback. I mean, it's a school, it's kids, right? And then slowly but surely over, I don't know, I want to say 7 years. And then the Olympics gave her sort of like under the guise of the Olympics. So I have so much hope for LA that she just incrementally was able to sneakily turn the city. Now, more people bike than drive in the city.
Mhm.
But they had the bones, they had the walkability, they had obviously the
Density.
retail, they had the metro, they had the bones. But I do think I think that's the living example. Copenhagen is the other one that went from zero to, because Amsterdam, the problem with Amsterdam is they started in the 70s when the cars were little, there
Yes.
weren't that many drivers. And they had, to your point before, they had this huge children's movement, which they're redoing right now. There's a new children's movement in Amsterdam to take back more streets. So I'm hopeful that it can happen.
Fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay. So transformation in what? 5? I mean, some of this stuff happens overnight, as you said, but 5 years. I mean,
I'm gonna be so aggressive. Because in TV, okay, California is number one in the world in tech and Hollywood. Okay. We are
I
really
know.
right. We do things at a very high level. I think we can be number one in the world in urbanism, partially because we have the bones, but also we have the furthest we have to go. Then New York's like practically, it's practically perfect. I mean, you've got the garbage and stuff. You need the congestion pricing, but LA and San Francisco and San Diego, we could be in, we have hundreds of cities that could just have San Luis Obispo. Perfect, incredible downtown, perfect for this. It's a college town. It has so many cities have the making. So I'm with the Olympics coming in 4 years. The housing could get built in about 2 years.
Okay.
Honestly, like
And we
that's
need
what the
housing.
experts say. So we could build about 400,000 units of housing in 2 years if we just did it. So, and this is one of those things you have to go all in. It's like an app. It's either buggy or it's not buggy. And the minute it's buggy and it crashes your phone, you delete it and you never look back, right? And if it works, it always works. So what we need to do is we need the leader, right? The mayor or the city council member who's like, you know what? I get it. I get that this is it's an amazing way to live, and it works, it checks so many public benefits. We haven't even talked about like the full climate of it all. These are zero carbon buildings with zero carbon mobility. And if California doesn't have a plan to meet our climate goals, like our state government, it's called the LAO, came out with a report about a year ago. It's like screaming from the rooftops, we have no plan. If we do what we say we do, which we don't, if we did, it would be 4% of what we need to do. Like we're not anywhere close. But if you were to look at passenger vehicles or 28% of climate emissions in California, there's no road to Paris, there's no road to 2 degrees that doesn't go through passenger cars. And the EVs won't scale. It's not even a joke. Like there's no way we're going to get there with EVs. And you have a tail on our internal combustion engines of 12 years. You can't get those cars out of the system without a massive buyback. So every which way you splice it, you really would do a 15-minute city. And so if you were to do the 5-year plan to 2030, which is 5 years away, right? It would be this.
Yeah.
So you have my vote.
I know. I
Hey,
know.
Lindsay, we could keep going here on this. It's so exciting and a great topic for. I hope our listeners are enjoying it too. So we just on our last question, if you've listened to our podcast, we do ask everybody the same question, so we can modify a little bit. But so if you were to create a new playbook and guiding principles around sustainability and entertainment, and we can say livable cities as well, What would be the first, even second or third on your list, in terms of a guiding principle?
For entertainment professionals as they're working in their field of making
That,
movies.
but you can adapt it to making change happen in livable cities and communities as well.
Well, specifically, I would say to the film industry, stop showing cars. Like, just show
Yeah,
people on bikes and show walkable neighborhoods and show, it's sort of like, when I started writing, everybody smoked on screen. And then I
right.
think CBS came first. You're like, okay, only the villains can smoke. And then it was nobody. And it's like, it's not a coincidence that like smoking rates are like down like what 50%, 90%. It's crazy. So I would say just, Fast and the Furious, you're going to have your cars for sure, James Bond, sure, but just less of it, less just show people living in a world where they can bike and walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The visualization, I think, is quite powerful, right? Yeah. And that's where, I mean, there's a whole movement on climate storytelling going on right now.
Mhm.
But really getting into those basics, like taking concepts like this from other industries and like using them as the setting of your, or the concept, the backdrop, whatever, of your film. I mean, makes total sense.
Even if
So
you have to build a backlot, right?
just go to Santa
Even if
Monica.
you, yeah, exactly.
It's just- no, that's great. That's great. Yeah, just stop showing it. That seems simple yet profound as well.
Yeah.
So,
You stop romanticizing it.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Cool. Well, thank you. I really appreciate this conversation and expanding our brains and having us think about things that we don't typically, think about. Of course, we all want livable cities, and I really appreciate you bringing this to the forefront of our minds. So thanks for being on.
Yeah. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, cool conversation with Lindsay. I knew it. I knew it. I could
Yeah.
feel myself getting excited and drawing parallels between, how she's talking about engaging with her community and how I I would love to, and I'm sure other people would love to talk
Mm.
about how we engage with production
It's like
in,
heartwarming.
yeah,
It's like wow, people really give a shit. I think that's kind of the way I look at it, and I feel the same way. I mean, right? It's sort of her message resonated with me and where how I choose to live and my, sort of where I travel and where I want to engage with my neighbors.
100%, 100%. And how cool is it? And this is kind of where, like, people are multidimensional, people are doing things in their community, all this stuff. Like, how cool is it that her neighborhood is a group of writers and other folks that work in the industry, and they're all coming together to think about this and problem solve using all the skills that they developed and use in the entertainment industry. So it's like, this is absolutely a way that we can tap into this side of people to
Yeah.
engage,
To
not
know how to
only
get
on
things done.
production, but broadly, right?
Yeah. And also just like get things done. I love what she said about just like when you need something done in film, you just it gets done, right? You need the stage built, it gets done by the best craftspeople in the biz. Whatever. You need this welded, okay, done. It's just like whatever needs to happen, it can get done. And I think I love that she's bringing that can-do attitude. And it sounds like she's not getting that much resistance. It sounds like people are like, we're interested. Let's get this going.
This whole like, let's show people, like, let's do this schematic, which I hope comes through. Where we've got a slide of it. She sent it in, but like, why wouldn't you want to live like that? And why wouldn't you? So this whole messaging thing we've been talking about that we brought up in the conversation,
Mhm.
like, I think it's just I'm starting to really, hone in and kind of smooth out those rough edges on how I'm thinking about the messaging because she's totally right. Like, show people, right? Like, give the schematic. And it's not just like a dry, like, schematic, it's like vibrant and cool,
Yeah.
right?
In LA, I mean, it's a perfect canvas for this. I mean, it's just she mentioned it many times. Like it's already there. She's got the bones. She said Like the foundation is there. Of course, the permitting and buildings need to be torn down and rebuilt. I mean, easier said than done. But I do think that if the political will is there, if the community engagement is there, we know we need to build tons of new affordable housing. Like that's a known fact. And actually, they're mandating that communities build affordable housing now all over North America and in Europe as well, to a lesser extent, because they've been doing it for a lot longer than we have. But I think that, I was inspired by her work, and I'm hoping that it can cascade to many other communities that are probably feeling the same. It's not just LA.
Totally. I feel like this is a prime example. We know the layers are there. We know, there are challenges and whatnot, but this is seems like such an example of like, if people are interested in it, it's better for everyone. Let's get out of our own way. People created the systems that we're
Yep.
currently struggling with, and people can reimagine what those systems are and recreate them,
Amen.
right?
Yep.
So, what are we doing here?
I mean, we're stuck behind bureaucracy, people in power who don't want to relinquish anything. I don't know, community development, it's not super easy because there's one person who wants to pipe up can derail all these types of initiatives, right? Which is kind of bullshit.
It is. And this is exactly what you said. I have said the same thing about production. Like I'm just drawing all of these parallels. And
Hmm.
this is why it's so cool, I think, to hear about what's going on in other industries, what people are thinking of, because there's so many ways to draw parallels and learn and adapt. Yes, one person on production can derail the whole
Yep.
thing. And we see that in government. We see that,
Hmm.
across the board in various sectors that we've been kind of dipping into. There's so
We need consensus. I mean, I think what she's doing is she's building consensus. I mean, thousands of people are involved in this initiative, to make the city a safer, better, livable community. And again, this goes to every facet of our daily life, how we work, how we play, how we engage. Again, why is it that the communities that we want to live in and be in are the ones that are actually set up to be livable? They're already there. And as I mentioned in the podcast, like, I mean, I was in Europe a few weeks ago, and I mean, you just feel it. You just feel the vibe. I mean, when you see a 65-year-old couple riding their bike down the canal, I mean, you're just like, oh my God, that's so cute and amazing and healthy.
yeah,
It can be a
bikes.
bike revolution.
Totally. Totally. Well, call to action, people. Like, bring
Hmm.
yourself to work, number one, engage in your local community, and check out this cool Livable Communities initiative and
Hmm.
see if there's anything you can draw on that. See if you're in LA, like, get involved. I mean, people in the
Absolutely.
entertainment industry are engaged in this. Maybe you'll meet some folks or work with them on a show or something. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Can't wait to ride my bike down the safe LA streets.
yeah, right. Wouldn't that be fun? All right, very cool. We're gonna wrap this up
Cool.
now. But thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. Don't forget to do that. That helps us out, and share with a friend. Have a conversation about
Yeah.
this.
And feel free to get in touch with us if you have any ideas or people we should speak to with, or even if you just want to give us a shout out, feel free to send us a message on our various platforms.
Yep. All right, cool. Our designer is Aaliyah Kane. Music is by Peter Chapman. Our producer is Colin Miller.